Hey guys, what is up? It is your friendly neighborhood Ugus here, back with a Hearthstone video. This time I'm going to be talking about the Grand Tournament. Full spoiler, basically just talking about the Grand Tournament cards and what I think of them before they come out. So first thing worth noting is that the Grand Tournament cards will be limited availability, I guess, in the Tavern Brawl this week, into next week, of course. Wednesday to Monday. It'll be two decks, the Hunter, which will be Illyria, and then Mage, which is Medivh. And I'm assuming they're doing that just to convince people to buy their hero portraits or whatever. I don't know. Whatever. The Hunter deck, if I'm not mistaken, is a Joust center deck, while the Medivh deck, the Mage deck, is an Inspire center deck. So it'll be cool. And those are pre-made decks. You'll be randomly assigned one upon getting into a game, and I think it's always going to be Mage versus Hunter. I think you're always going to be at one side of that matchup, similar to the Nefarian Ragnaros Brawl. So here I'm just on Hearthstone, looking at the images of the Grand Tournament cards. So let's get into it. First card we see here is the one. Well, I guess it is the only Druid legendary. The only class that gets more than one legendary is Hunter, which we'll get to in a minute. So the Druid legendary, Aviana, 9 mana, 5/5. Your minions cost 1. Now I have looked into this, and it will never make a minion cost more mana. So, for example, if you have Wisp and you play Aviana, Wisp will not cost 1, it'll still cost 0. Thaurissan with Aviana will cause all of your minions to cost 0, which is good. And I believe the reduction from Thaurissan can happen before Aviana, which I think is the only situation where Aviana will ever be relevant. I have very little faith in this card actually being good. So the reason that I think that is 9 mana for a 5/5 is a lot, right? And then the main argument against that is the fact that you're not going to be playing Aviana alone. You're not going to just be playing it on, turn 8 after one wild growth earlier in the game, right? You're just playing a naked Aviana, just like you don't play Antonidas alone. You play Antonidas, and then you play like 1 or 2 spare parts generally, or like an Arcane Missiles or something, right? So you're not playing Aviana alone. The issue is at 9 mana, without Thaurissan, you're playing Aviana and one other guy, unless you have somehow saved your why am I forgetting the name of the card? Innervate. Unless you save your Innervate for turn 9/10, then you're playing Aviana with one other card, right? You're spending your turn playing a 5/5 and whatever your other bomb is, right? Which you probably could have played at an earlier turn, but you were saving it for the Aviana turn. It just seems really unrealistic to work out. If Aviana had a bigger body, like 7/7, absolutely would have been a great card, but at 5/5 it's just too small, it's very weak, and it really doesn't have a huge flashy effect. Like, I guarantee there will be decks playing Aviana and it'll make it look good, but at the end of the day, if I'm gonna spend 2 to 4 cards on a single turn in the late game to do something as Druid, I am going to be playing Force of Nature and then Savage Roar, right? That's my plan. It's not play Aviana and Ancient of War, right? So I think the card is fairly weak. Astral Communion, 4 mana, gain 10 mana crystals, discard your hand. Worth noting that these are not empty mana crystals, so you could theoretically use them on the turn you play Astral Communion, which would require you to do something like have an Acolyte of Pain or a Loot Hoarder on the table, and then attack it into an enemy minion to draw a card after playing Astral Communion, then using the mana from Communion to play the card, which in best case scenario would be either a Nourish or an Ancient of Lore. But that's not always going to happen. I think Astral Communion has a really, really unique, really cool effect. Very powerful, but I don't think it's going to see a lot of play. Just due to the fact that the downside of discarding your hand is pretty dramatic, obviously. I mean, it stops you from doing broken shit, which is great. But I think at the same time, it's a little too weak, and it makes the rest of your game way more luck-based. Because instead of being able to choose from, a myriad of options each turn and planning out a curve, all you do is you slam the highest mana cost card that presumably draws cards that you have in your hand of 2 cards, right? So it becomes very reliant on the top deck after playing Astral Communion, but it could still be pretty good. Like, I can imagine a lot of situations where Astral Communion is good, right? Obviously, if you're like Innervate Coin Astral Communion on turn 1, turn 2, top deck, I don't know, Dr. Boom, and play Dr. Boom, Hero Power, kill their 1-drop or something, or 2-drop. Like, obviously something like that is pretty insane, but it's not reliable, right? So it's a tough one to call, but I am of the opinion that it is probably going to see more play than Aviana. Next card is Mulch. 3-mana spell, destroy a minion. Add a random minion to your opponent's hand. This is essentially a fixed version of Naturalize. And why I say that is that Mulch, although random and could sometimes give your opponent Dr. Boom, or Aviana or something, right? It can give them an insane legendary. There's way less legendaries than there are shitty, not legendary minions, right? Like, you could give them a Magma Rager or Ice Rager, right? And the problem with Naturalize is that because they're just drawing 2 cards, the 2 cards just as a number isn't the problem. It's the fact that they're getting 2 cards from their deck, right? 2 cards that they put in their deck because they work with the rest of the cards in their deck, right? Giving them a random minion is much less likely to be a downside than letting them draw 2 cards from their constructed deck, right? So I think Mulch is definitely way better than Naturalize, and it is hard removal, which is a thing Druid doesn't have outside of Mulch and Naturalize. So I think it's great. I think it's a very, very good card. And at 3 mana, that's super affordable and super reasonable. As Druid, you really aren't doing a lot on 3. You kind of want to get past 3 as soon as possible, which is why Wild Growth on turn 2 is so powerful, because then on turn 3 you have 4 mana and can play Shredders. Obviously, Shade of Nax is a card that a lot of Druids play, and I don't know exactly how Mulch is going to fit in to the curve, but I'd say it's definitely a better 3-drop for most Druid decks than Shade of Nax. If you're pretty much strictly combo Druid, then sure, Shade of Nax is better, but I think in terms of ramp Druid, you probably just want to be playing Mulch. So there's that. Knight of the Wild, 7 mana, 6/6. Whenever you summon a beast, reduce the cost of this card by 1. Different ambiguous wording than Bolvar, but whatever, who cares? It's fine. I mean, the card is okay. 6/6 is a big body. After playing 1 beast while this is in your hand, it's 6 mana, 6/6, which isn't great, but it's playable, right? Which is good. And the thing is, it's always going to have the 6/6 stat line. So even if you top deck this in the super late game, unlike Bolvar, this guy's going to always be relevant as a 6/6. He's always going to be a 6/6. Bolvar, if you top deck him, he's awful, right? He doesn't do shit. So this guy's way better in that regard. And this isn't a beast, unfortunately, I don't think, right? Druid of the Saber is a beast? Well, wait. Okay, so wording on summon and play and stuff like that is not very cut and dry. So I'm not actually certain how it would interact with the Druid of the blank, right? So there's Druid of the Flame, Druid of the Claw, Druid of the Saber. And they all start as not beasts and transform into beasts. So I don't know how they interact with Knight of the Wild. I'll have to look that up. So I apologize I can't give that info to you right now, as I do not know it. But if it works the way I would hope, which is it would reduce his cost, then that's great. Then this guy's probably going to be coming down fairly early, and a 6/6 is pretty big, so he could be fine. Savage Combatant is a beast that doesn't require transforming. 4 mana, 5/4, Inspire, give your hero +2 attack this turn. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. 3 is a pretty good sweet spot for your hero power in terms of how much damage it's dealing. 3 definitely gets rid of a lot of the trouble cards. I mean, it gets rid of the healthier, early drops, and it kind of defeats Piloted Shredder in that sense. So the first thing that people probably note about this card is the 4 health, which is very relevant because Piloted Shredder exists, and a Piloted Shredder trading into a 5/4 is like, it's Shredder's dream, right? That's the dream. So it's interesting that this guy has the counterplay to Shredder built in by making your hero power kill Shredder. So it's very unique. It obviously depends on which one is played first. If Combatant's played first, then the Shredder's not probably coming down, because it would just get eaten by hero power, and then the Combatant could attack into the 2-drop, assuming it's not Millhouse, and just kill it. So, really hard to place this card. The issue is it doesn't really fit into any current Druid deck. So it would require some amount of deck building around it to be good, but I think if you could build a deck around it, it would be good, personally. So that's my opinion on Savage Combatant. Darnassus Aspirant, it's fucking bonkers. I don't think I really need to tell you this. It's a very, very maybe accidentally perfect card. I say maybe accidentally because the amount of situations where this card is insanely good for the game is so crazy that there's no way they could have all been intentional. So Darnassus Aspirant, of course, if you aren't watching the video, 2 mana, 2/3, Battle Cry, gain an empty mana crystal, Death Rattle, lose a mana crystal. Okay? Simple enough. Now, 2 mana, 2/3, that's fine. That's not exciting, but it's fine. 2 mana, 2/3 is pretty much what you expect. Battle Cry, gain an empty mana crystal, it's a wild growth on a stick, which is very good for the same mana cost at that. Death Rattle, lose a mana crystal, that's just to balance it, right? So there is counterplay to Darnassus Aspirant. Now, the interesting part comes into play when you can mess with the fact that this is a 2-drop, and the Death Rattle is a kind of continuous effect, while the Battle Cry only affects the person who plays it, right? And why I'm saying it in such a weird fashion is Mirror Image, or Mirror Entity, sorry, not Mirror Image, Mirror Entity, the Mage secret that copies a minion, the next minion that your opponent plays, will copy the 2/3, but will not get the empty mana crystal. And then, if it dies, they lose the mana crystal, right? So you have insane counterplay to Tempo Mage, which, I'm not trying to, claim that Tempo Mage is the most broken deck of all time, but it's very frustrating to deal with Mirror Entity, because that card is busted. And this is a great way, and very perfect way to deal with it. Another good thing it does, everybody is in pretty unanimous agreement upon the fact that Piloted Shredder is an insanely good card, right? Absolutely. This makes Shredder worse. Same thing as Mirror Entity. You get the 2/3 body, and if it dies, you lose a mana crystal. You don't gain one for it coming in, right? Because it's a Battle Cry. So I think this card is awesome. I think it's really, really cool, and it's really good at that. I think it is actually a very good card, and I think Druids are going to be playing this shit so hard. Because the stat line is good, right? I mean, 2 mana, 2/3. I know I was like downplaying it a little bit, but 2 mana, 2/3 is great. That's what you want. Especially when you have a 1 damage hero power. It's pretty much perfect. The gaining an empty mana crystal is sweet because, I mean, it basically forces them to deal with it, right? It has a soft taunt, if you want to call it that. And a 2 mana 2/3 that has a soft taunt that, if not dealt with, just ramps you is great. I love it. Okay, Wild Walker. 4 mana 4/4, give a friendly beast +3 health. Whatever. I'm going to ignore this card. It's whatever. Druid of the Saber. 2 mana 2/1. Transform to gain charge. So it's a 2 mana 2/1 charge. Or 2 mana 3/2 stealth. So it's hard to say how good this card is. I mean, obviously, it reminds me of Shade of Nax a lot, because on the turn after you play it, it is a 3-attack stealth minion, which is good, for sure. 2 mana 3/2 is kind of the, 2 mana 2/3, 2 mana 3/2 are fairly accepted as good minion stat lines, right? And giving stealth to the 2 mana 3/2 makes it better. Because it doesn't get killed by the 1-drops, right? Like if the other guy plays, like, I don't know, Worgen Infiltrator. The reason Worgen Infiltrator is good, by the way, is same reason, basically. But other guy plays Worgen Infiltrator, you play Druid of the Saber, his Infiltrator doesn't trade for your Saber, you get to hero power his Infiltrator, and you keep your Saber, assuming he's attacking your face. And because the only deck that plays Infiltrator is Face Hunter, he is. So anyway, Druid of the Saber is really sweet, and the added benefit of being able to just be a, 2 mana Holy Smite or a 2 mana Living Roots is pretty good. So I think it's a very reasonable card. Living Roots, speaking of, 1 mana spell, choose 1, deal 2 damage, so Holy Smite, or summon 2 1/1 saplings. This card's bonkers. I mean, it's better than Holy Smite in all situations. This is an actual card that is strictly better. Now, obviously, there is the argument that, if it gets Thought Stolen, then wouldn't you rather he had Holy Smite so he couldn't make 2 1/1 saplings? I mean, yeah, but whatever, shut up. But this card's crazy good. Druid doesn't have a 1 mana removal spell aside. Wait, Naturalize is 1, right? Whatever. That's not a card. So Living Roots fills a gap that Druid has, and it is flexible. You can get 2 1/1s, which works so well with the fact that Druid also likes to have a lot of bodies on the table, right? Because of Savage Roar, pretty much explicitly. So, I mean, this card's great. It does everything Druid wants it to do, and I'm actually kind of terrified for, combo or mid-range Druid in the near future. Because, I mean, Living Roots, Darnassus Aspirant, debatably Mulch, those all seem like pretty sweet cards to stick in combo Druid. So, it looks kind of scary to me. But let's move on to Hunter. That took 18 minutes for Druid. Alright, I have a lot to say. Hunter, we got Acid Maw and Dreadscale. Acid Maw, 7 mana 4/2. Whenever another minion takes damage, destroy it. And Dreadscale, 3 mana 4/2. At the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to all other minions. This is such a cool design because this was such a cool fight in WoW. Most people didn't like Trial of the Grand Crusade, whatever it was. Wait, these guys were in the raid, right? No, they were the dungeon. God, I don't even remember. It was like fucking 6 years ago or something. Really cool boss fight that, these two guys kind of worked in tandem and had different abilities that messed with you, and if you got hit by both worms, you were fucking dead, so you had to do a lot of stuff. It was really cool. And they kind of transferred that flavor right into Hearthstone. Now, I will say, 7 mana on Acid Maw, ooh, way too high. Very powerful effect, but 7 mana is just too high for a 4/2. It really is. I mean, obviously, if you can like turn 10 combo Acid Maw, Unleash the Hounds, their board is 100% of the time swept there, unless they have stuff like Belcher. But I mean, that's that's powerful. That's very powerful. And then obviously, if you live the dream and combine Acid Maw and Dreadscale, well then you get 2 turns of every other minion dying, aside from Acid Maw and Dreadscale, which is good. And then Dreadscale alone is interesting. It doesn't work with any other Hunter card, really. You don't want to be whirlwinding as Hunter, generally. You can be. Obviously, you can build a deck where you want to be, and a whirlwind every turn is pretty sweet. Like, you can throw in Acolyte of Pain and stuff like that into your Control Hunter deck, and it's weird to say that, but Control Hunter is definitely being pushed. So I think Dreadscale is very good as a card in a vacuum. Acid Maw is shit, so we'll see. I'm assuming Dreadscale will be seeing a bit of play, while Acid Maw will really just be sitting in binders. But anyway, on to Stable Master, another 3 mana 4/2. Battlecry, give a friendly beast immune this turn. It's a very cool effect. The issue is there's not really a great curve out until you see King's Elec, but I mean, I guess there's a few ways to curve out with it. The problem is that most hunters, their 2-drop is Knife Juggler, because of the obvious synergies with Unleash the Hounds and just being an aggressive 2-drop. And obviously that's not a beast. So you don't really have a great curve out with Stable Master as is. When you throw in King's Elec, it gets a lot better. So I think Stable Master might see a good amount of play, and if it is, it's going to see it in the like hybridy, almost mid-range Hunter that's probably going to crop up with stuff like King's Elec and of course Stable Master. Maybe Ball of Spiders. I don't know. I'll get to it in a second, but we'll talk about Ball of Spiders. Lock and Load. Bonkers broken. Craft this shit. You're going to be playing control/combo Hunter, so get used to it. Whatever. Ball of Spiders. 6 mana. Summon 3 1/1 Web Spinners. I love this card. I think it's so close to being good. If it gave 4 Web Spinners, it would be very good. If it cost 5 mana, it would still probably be like close. I think 4.5 mana for 3 Web Spinners would be very reasonable, right? I think. A Web Spinner normally is a 1 mana 1/1. When it dies, you get a beast in your hand. So, I don't know. Ball of Spiders seems so potentially good. And maybe with something like Bestial Wrath and Stable Master, you could make Ball of Spiders reasonable. I don't know. It's so weird. You could even throw in like the wolf who gives beast +1 attack. I don't know. Ball of Spiders probably won't see play. I might mess around with it a bit if I open it. I don't think I'm going to craft it, but I might mess around with it. We'll see. I think it's very cool. Brave Hunter. Why is that? There's not an image of it. I don't remember what Brave... Oh, I do remember what Brave... We'll get to it. Wrangler. 5 mana 3/3. Battlecry. If you have a beast, summon a random beast. Now, this guy, a lot of people are saying is bad. And I initially tended to agree, but that's because we saw him, if I'm not mistaken, we saw him before we saw Acid Maw Dreadscale, before we saw King's Elec, before we saw Bear Trap. And I do think before those cards, I think Wrangler was bad. But now that we have these cards, visible, I think he might actually be good. He's a 2-for-1, right? The reason Savannah Highmane is so good is because it is a 2 or 3-for-1 in every situation, pretty much. I mean, obviously, if they silence it specifically with an owl, it gets a lot worse, but it still requires an answer. And Wrangler is pretty cool because, I mean, here's the issue, right? In late game, you top deck Ram Wrangler. Well, you fucking lost. You have a 5-mana 3/3, right? You have an Antique Healbot without the gain 8. It's really bad. But if you can play him on curve after playing beasts, he will summon you another beast. Worst case scenario, other beast is what, Hungry Crab or Captain's Parrot? That's worst case scenario. And those are pretty bad, but they're still 1/1s. It's not great. 5 mana for 4/4 split across 2 bodies is not good, but it's still fine. And that's the worst case scenario. And Crab is a 1/2? I don't remember. Like, it's still fine. And then if you get like a web spinner, then you're getting another beast. You're rolling dice again. And then if you hit, like, you know, Acid Maw, well, you fucking won. You know? It's just, it's such a swingy card, no matter which way you think about it. And that can be good or bad. So, I don't know. I think Ram Wrangler should get more respect than it currently is getting. But at the same time, I don't actually expect a lot out of it in Constructed. In Arena, it seems pretty good, assuming you can get the Beast deck. Which can't be guaranteed at all. But, you know, if you already have like 7 beasts and your choice is Ram Wrangler, Kazan Mystic, and like, I don't know, Little Exorcist or whatever, you're going to take the Ram Wrangler and you're going to be happy about it, I think. So anyway, moving on. Power Shot, 3 mana Consecration, kind of. It's 2 damage to minion and the 2 minions next to it. So it's a fixed explosive shot. And I say fixed because explosive shot just sucks. 5 mana for, you know, a concentrated consecration effect is not very good. 3 mana is a very good mana cost for it. And the fact that it's not just consecration is also fine. It's also good, actually. And also the fact that it is not explosive trap is very good, because the problem with explosive trap is that you can play around it. Can't play around Power Shot. Well, you can, sort of, with like minion positioning and not committing 3 dudes to the board, but it's very wishy-washy, and I think Power Shot's going to be a very good card in the mid-range and control hunters. King's Elec, 2 mana 3/2 beast, which is great. Battle Cry, reveal a minion in each deck. If yours costs more, draw it. Joust, if you win, draw it. Sick card. Just sickening, right? This card is so good. Now, you're not going to win the Joust every time. Even if you're playing Control Hunter, right? Even if your average minion mana cost is like 6. You're not going to win every Joust. That's a fact. You know, you're going to have a time where you joust, flipping another King's Elec, and they hit their Dr. Boom, right? Even if they're Zoo, you know, they're going to have Boom in their deck, and you're going to lose the joust. So you need to be able to take advantage of the fact that it is a beast, which you can easily do so with Stable Master, which is good, right? And maybe even Bestial Wrath, which is a card people forgot about entirely. It's 1 mana, give a beast, is it +2 attack, I think? Even I forgot about it. +2 attack and immune this turn. I think it's 2 attack. It might be 1, but I think it's 2. So you need to take advantage of the fact that it's a beast, right? And you need to tend to have higher costs in your deck, but you don't need to. Because even if you're facing a control deck, you could have the time where you flip the other King's Elec, and they flip their Zombie Chow. And then you win, right? So if you're playing a, Control Hunter deck, where your average mana cost is 6, which is unreasonable, but let's just go with it for the sake of argument and simplicity, you're going to win the joust like maybe 85% of the time. And again, I'm just completely spitballing just to kind of convey a point. Like 85% of the time you win the joust, 15% you don't, right? If you're playing King's Elec in like a hybrid mid-rangey sort of deck that still plays a bunch of early minions, but does play stuff like High Mane and maybe Ram Wrangler and Stable Master and stuff like that, then you're probably going to win the joust, I don't know, 30% of the time. You're not going to win a lot, but when you do, it's super good. It's just a 2-mana 3/2 beast draw a card, which is great. And draw a minion card as well. So I think King Zealot is insanely good. I think that card is ridiculous. Moving on to Bear Trap, though. 2-mana secret. After your hero is attacked, summon a 3/3 bear with taunt. Very good. I think this card is way too good, actually. So it's so hard now to test for traps, right? Because Hunter has... Okay, so before, right? If you want to test for explosive, you have to attack their face, right? But if you put them on explosive, then you want to throw all of your 2 health minions away into other dudes and then trigger the explosive, right? If you put them on freezing, then it's kind of harder to test. It depends on the situation, but a lot of times you want to hit the face as well. Because if you hit another dude and you're wrong and it's not freezing and it's a snake trap, then you summon 3 snakes for them. If you put them on snake trap, you can just ignore their board and hit their face, but then here's the problem. Bear trap comes in, and every single way to test for a trap is thrown out the window, and now you just lose and you suck it up. Because if you put them on explosive, you have to send all your dudes into other dudes, then hit their face. You hit their face, it's not explosive, all your dudes are dead. Now they have a 3/3 with taunt, and you're left with 1 guy on the board, right? That's awful. If you put them on freezing, right, you don't want to attack their minion in case it's snakes, right? So you attack their face. First guy attacks the face, and in a usual situation, you attack with like a small dude to the face to, you know, get rid of the freezing, and then you can get in with your bigger dudes. But now there's a 3/3 with taunt, which is fairly large in its own right. I mean, it kills Shredder, right? So now there's just a wrench thrown in your plans with every single trap that they could possibly have. So I think Bear Trap is nuts. I think it's the perfect card to push a more trap-based Hunter over the top. It's very good. It's insane, actually, because it's a beast as well. I don't know. It's crazy good. Brave Hunter. Forgive the no image. I guess it failed to load. Whatever. 1 mana 2/1. Inspire. If your hand is empty, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. I think does like extra 2 damage if your hand's empty. It's fine. Whatever. Not exciting. The only good thing about it is that it's the girl from Brave. So whatever. Alright, moving on to Mage. Oh, I gotta speed this shit up. Okay. Ronin, 8 mana 7/7, Death Rattle, add 3 arcane missiles to your hand. Crazy good. Insanely good top end for a more, I guess, mid-range focused Tempo Mage. I mean, Tempo Mage generally likes to be mid-range as well. Like, that's when it tries to win. It doesn't try to aggro them out. It just tries to put a threat on the table and maintain tempo, hence the name Tempo Mage. But I think Ronin's a great finisher. Easily could replace Toshli, that's his name, in the deck. Because normally you play Toshli just because he gives 2 spare parts, which is good for Antonidas, who is your main finisher. Ronin can be another finisher that, when dealt with, also makes Antonidas and all your other shit better, because it gives you 3 1-mana spells that do 9 damage collectively, triggers your Mana Worms and your Flame Wakers and all that jazz. It's a very good card. It's going to see a lot of play, absolutely. Kuldara Drake, 6 mana 6/6, use your hero power any number of times. It's fine. I don't think it's going to see a lot of play, but it's a cool idea, and it could become broken with future expansions. But as of right now, not really insane, just fine. Arcane Blast, 1 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion. This spell gets double bonus from spell damage. It's good. It's a Holy Smite, which Mage needed. You don't want to Flame Cannon generally to kill a 2 health minion, especially not a 1 health minion. I mean, obviously, if it's a 1 health minion, you ping it with a firebolt, whatever. I'm tired, apparently. I think Arcane Blast is good, though. Very good. It's so awkward because it can't go face, but neither can Flame Cannon. So I think, at the very least, decks playing Flame Cannon, if they were playing 2, they're going to cut 1 Flame Cannon for 1 Arcane Blast, almost assuredly. If they're only playing 1 Flame Cannon, then they might even just cut that for an Arcane Blast, because it's basically just a Flame Cannon in most situations. So, it's pretty good. Effigy is 3 mana secret. Whenever a friendly minion dies, you summon a random minion with the same cost. It's like Duplicate, except it's more immediate, although also kind of random. I think it's great in Tempo Mage. I think it's just a great thing to get off Mad Scientist. As long as you're not paying the 3 mana for Effigy, I think it is very good. But if you are paying the 3 mana for Effigy, it's a lot worse, but it's probably still playable. We'll see, though. Polymorph Boar, transform a minion into a Huffer, which is a 4/2 boar with charge, also beast type. So, very good. It's 1 mana less than Polymorph, and that allows you to immediately sync it up with Arcane Blast, which is 2 cards to kill 1 dude, but it's still 4 mana, so it's a lot earlier than you could do the Polymorph Ping combo, which would be 6 mana. So it's definitely relevant, and it's very flexible too, because you can turn your own dude into a Huffer to get 4 extra damage. It can be 3 mana, 4 damage, which is fine. So sure, yeah, Polymorph Boar is sweet. It's a sweet card. Fallen Hero, 2 mana, 3/2. Your hero power deals 1 extra damage. I think it's a very good card. I think people are underrating the shit out of this thing. Most people are saying, well, will it survive a turn? No. Well, that's fine, because does Knife Juggler normally survive a turn? I mean, yeah, he really does quite often survive a turn. So why would Fallen Hero not? Right? And if Fallen Hero survives a turn, you get to kill anything, almost, that is going to oppose it, right? In order for the thing opposing it to not die, it needs stealth or 3 or more health, right? And that's also assuming that you don't have an Arcane Blast or a Flame Cannon or, a Frostbolt, like tons of stuff, right? So I think Fallen Hero is very good. Turning your Ping, he's essentially Steam Weedle Sniper, but stacks with another version of himself. Also 3/2 is generally better than a 2/3, so I think he's sweet. Flame Lance is shit, moving on. Darnassus Aspirant, it's shit, moving on. Spellslinger is pretty cool. 3 mana, 3/4 Battlecry, add a random spell to each player's hand. It is a different spell to each player's hand. People are debating the semantics, the specific ordering of words and shit when the card was first spoiled, but whatever. Super cool card. It's a spider tank for Tempo Mage, which is cool. I like it a lot. I actually think that this card's going to see play in Tempo Mage, but do not quote me because I don't actually know. I don't play enough Tempo Mage, but I feel like a spider tank that has synergy in Tempo Mage, because on average, right, if you're playing a deck that likes to just cast spells because of Mana Worms or Flame Wakers or what have you, on average, any random spell in the game for you is going to be better than any random spell in the game for your opponent, because no matter what, you get value out of it. Obviously, there are outlier situations where they get swipe and they blow you out, but it's still, a random spell to your opponent's hand is not nearly as big a deal as people think, mostly because they could get a Flame Lance, right? Every shitty spell that you've ever imagined could be in your opponent's hand. Sure, they could get super lucky and get a Flame Strike, but that's an outlier, whatever. That's like, when Doomsayer pops out of a Piloted Shredder. It sucks, but you're not going to not play Piloted Shredder because that happens sometimes, right? So I think the same logic can be applied to Spellslinger, and I think he's definitely very good. All right, moving on to Paladin. See, look at that. blaze right through it. Aedric the Pure, 7 mana, 3/7. Battlecry, change all enemy minions' attacks to 1. Very cool effect. Obviously, he's just like an Aldor Peacekeeper, but for the whole board. And the best thing about it is, and this is the part that I love so much about this card's design, he has 7 health. If the opponent has 7 minions, they can all gang up and kill him, which is so funny to me. But I think he's insanely good. I think he'll see a good amount of play in Control Paladin for sure. I can't imagine how having a board-wide Aldor Peacekeeper effect for 7 mana is not worthwhile. While also 3/7, pretty good stat line, honestly. Obviously, you want like 7 mana, 7/7, but if all your opponent's minions have 1 attack, what's the difference between your dude having a shitload of attack and not? I don't know. Because at that point, what I'm trying to say, sorry, before I just move on, what I'm trying to say is the average power, the average attack of the board gets shifted so far down on the power curve that having 3 attack at 7 mana is perfectly reasonable, right? If that makes sense at all, which I'm hoping it does. So I think he's very good. I think he's really cool. Mysterious Challenger, 6 mana, 6/6 Battlecry, put 1 of each secret from your deck into the battlefield. Each. Paladin has a shitload of secrets. What is it, 6? Yeah, so, yeah. It's potentially a 6 mana, 6/6 draw 6. I mean, that's pretty cool. Is it playable? Hard to say. You're not going to play most of the secrets. You're not going to play Eye for an Eye, most likely. You're probably also not going to play Repentance. And you're probably not going to play Redemption, but Competitive Spirit, which we'll get to in a minute, is pretty good. Avenge is very good, and the Get Down, whatever that guy, that's pretty good too. So it could see play in like a mid-rangey paladin that plays a bunch of secrets and stuff. But it's weird because normally with secrets you want to get them out of your deck as soon as possible, and by turn 6 you've most likely already drawn one. And the problem is, if you oversaturate your deck with secrets, banking on drawing Mysterious Challenger, then sometimes you're not going to draw the Challenger and you're just going to draw your secrets, and it's going to be really bad. And sometimes you're going to draw all your secrets and Mysterious Challenger, and then he's just a 6 mana 6/6, which is still fine, but it's really hard to pin how good this guy's going to be. I think he's fine, though. I think he's a very unique card, and as more secrets get implemented for Paladin, I think he's just going to get better and better, and maybe eventually see play, but as of right now, probably not. Enter the Colosseum, 6 mana, spell, destroy all minions except each player's highest attack minion. It's good. It's real good. Because you can force the way that this works. Assuming there is a very complex board state. And by the way, that whoops was me dropping a packet of cards on the floor. I'm sorry. It might have sounded like I popped a little toot there, but don't worry. I don't up to it. But you can, from a very complex board state, you can kind of craft how you want it to work out, right? Like, you can attack your small guys into their highest attack minion, right? Like, let's say they have a Dr. Boom, an Aldor Peacekeeper, and the 2 Boombots, right? What you could do is attack, like, 3 of your guys into Dr. Boom, he dies. Then play Enter the Colosseum. Both his Boombots die. If you still have one of those dudes left, they're dead. But then your giant guy can just kill the Peacekeeper, assuming he doesn't die to bad Boombot RNG. And then the board state's, like, insanely swung in your favor, right? So there's a lot of situations where you can kind of craft it to be better than it sounds. So I like it. I think it's a very good card. I think it's a brawl-like card for Control Paladin, which is something that they arguably have been missing. So I think it's really cool. Tuskar Jouster, 5 mana 5/5. You joust. If you win, gain 7 life. Whatever. Argent Lance is really bad, so I'm gonna just ignore it. Competitive Spirit is a 1 mana, of course, secret. When your turn starts, give your minions +1/+1. It only activates if you control minions. So it's good. It's real good. It's real good. I don't know how else to put it. They can't really test for it because it triggers on your turn. And they can't really deal with it aside from killing all but one guy on your board. Like, the best way that they can deal with it is by having a read on it being Competitive Spirit and killing your board bar one creature, or minion, sorry. So then it triggers on your turn being a 1 mana, give target minion +1/+1, which is bad. But it's so hard to deal with in most situations, you don't really have the option. Like, you can go for like a full clear or whatever. Alright, next card, Murloc Knight. 4 mana, 3/4, inspire summon a random Murloc. Average Murloc, thank you Reddit, is roughly a 2/3. Which means that your hero power as Paladin turns into make a spider tank with potential extra abilities. Obviously, that's just average. That's not realistic in practice. But it's still really good. I think Murloc Knight is very good. I think the card is very, very good. Sometimes you're going to get blown out by summoning the 2/1, either of the 2/1s, I guess, or the Grimscale Oracle, or, you know, there's a lot of ways you can get blown out. But there's also a lot of ways you can get rewarded. For example, getting, oh god, what's this fucking, the Old Murkai. That's the one. If you hit Old Murkai off this guy, it's pretty damn good, right? Because immediately he'll have 3 attack. He can deal with whatever's most likely opposing Murloc Knight. So it's an interesting card. I think it's actually very good if it survives a turn, of course. If it doesn't survive a turn, that's pretty bad. 4 mana, 3/4 is a not great stat line, but that's okay. Next card, War Horse Trainer. Your Silverhand recruits have +1 attack, 3 mana, 2/4. Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's just good. It's an aura effect. It's not like the Quartermaster. So it is just an aura. So if Warhorse Trainer dies, they lose the bonus. However, Silverhand recruits summoned after playing Warhorse Trainer will have the bonus. So I like it. I think it's pretty sweet. 3 mana, 2/4 is not a bad body. And then just the fact that if, like, on curve, right, turn 1, and I'm talking like a Boladin. Turn 1, Leper Gnome. Turn 2, Hero Power. Not a great start for a Boladin until you play turn 3, Warhorse Trainer. And then you attack with your, your pair of 2/1s. And then on the following turn, you can do something like another 1-drop and muster for battle. And then, not get all the guys because your board is incredibly flooded. But, well, no, you'd get all the guys in that specific instance. But anyway, there's a lot of things about this guy that make it very interesting. A lot of potential play around it. I think is very cool. And I think if it does find a home, it's going to be very good. The question is it going to find a home? And as of right now, it's not really known because he doesn't fit into the curve of like where he wants to. Because you want to play him the turn after you muster, but muster is also a 3-drop. So unless you have the coin, it's really awkward. But I think he's still very good. Final Paladin card, Seal of Champions. 3 mana, give a minion +3 attack, and Divine Shield. It's fine. I mean, it's pretty good. Like, it does a lot of good shit. It does allow you to immediately just trade away that Divine Shield to trade up, right? You can slap this on, say, your Knife Juggler and go into whatever minion they played and kill it. Or you could just go face for 6, and it's brutal. Because then they, in order for them to deal with it, they have to ping Juggler with, like, if they're a mage, obviously it's a lot easier. But, they'd have to ping off the shield and then trade their minion into it. and then they've given up their entire turn 3 and taken the 6 damage from the juggler. It's a mess is what it is. So I think it's a pretty cool card. I don't know if it'll see play because, if you draw it in a top decking situation, it is very bad. I guess you can make, well, that's not entirely true because you can make a 4/1 Divine Shield because you're a Paladin. So, you know what? Maybe it's actually pretty good in top deck wars. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I think this card is pretty good though. So there's that. I would move on to Priest, but actually I'm gonna call it because this took 50 minutes to cover 4 classes. So next time we'll maybe cover more classes and then go to neutral. Because hot damn, that's a whew. I didn't expect to have that much to say about this shit, but I did. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you like this sort of content so we can do more in the future. I will be recording the next 4 classes and then the final class and probably the neutral cards in a 3rd video. So look forward to those. If you're sick of seeing people doing their first impressions of TGT, that's cool too. Whatever, I don't care. Obviously, you wouldn't be hearing this, but anyway, I just wanted to record my thoughts because I thought people might be interested in hearing it, and that was enjoyable to me at least. So I hope you enjoyed it as well, and I will see you in the next video.